What happens when your body gives out, but your will refuses to quit? Today's guest, Ty Gipson, has survived three transplant surgeries and turned a lifetime of adversity into a powerhouse philosophy he calls no options. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. Great to have you with us again. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or listening on your favorite podcasting app, however you found us, we are grateful that you've tuned in today. And I am excited for you to hear from my guest today. Really inspiring stuff, an awesome story, and something that I hope you'll be able to practically apply some lessons, practically apply them to your life today. Before we get to my guest, though, I want to remind you guys about Fox and Sons coffee. It's my favorite coffee brand. It's what I drink every single morning. It's delicious and it's also high quality. It doesn't have those mold toxins that most of the coffee brands that you get in your grocery stores today are going to have. And you can get it shipped directly to your door. Just go to foxandsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. And you can get 15% off an order of $40 or more by using promo code John at checkout. So go pick up some coffee today. All right, let's bring in my guest for today. And my guest is Ty Gipson. He's an entrepreneur. He's a keynote speaker, a relentless survivor who has spent 33 years mastering the art of sales across 5 different industries. Started out with graphic design and marketing work at Disney World, and then building that expertise into treasury management and branding. As I talked about at the top of the show, he's battled type 1 diabetes his entire life. He's endured 3 transplant surgeries, complications along the way. But rather than letting this adversity define him, he's built it into a mission. He founded the Gipson Group LLC, partnered his branding company with major athletic programs, survived the 2008 financial crash, and now hosts a podcast called No Options. And he's inspiring audiences nationwide. He's a public speaker as well. So Ty, welcome to Finding Freedom.
John, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. I love the intro though. I was enjoying that. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Excited to have you here. And I'm always excited to talk to inspiring people who, there's no sugarcoating it. You've been through some rough things in your life, and you haven't allowed it to become an excuse. You've turned it into an engine to power you. So I'm always interested in learning from people. And let's start out. Let's turn back to the beginning here and start out there. So take us back to when you first found out that you had type 1 diabetes and when it entered your life, what that was like for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I grew up down in Texas, Southeast Texas to be exact, kind of right there on the border of Louisiana and Texas on the coast. So, just to give you an idea where I grew up, and growing up, my parents and my dad especially was the guy that just said, it'll be all right, boy, dust it off, put a Band-Aid on it kind of thing. Nobody wants to hear about your problems, so that's kind of the way I was raised. And so at 8 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And John, just to go back, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, I'm 56. So it was in the 70s when this was happening. So it was the technology that's here today was nowhere near what we had back then. So it was really a different time for diabetics, right? And so when I was diagnosed, it was really brittle diabetes. But my parents, excuse me, as I mentioned, were the ones that just kind of helped me push through. They didn't treat me any different. Didn't let me use it as an excuse. played sports. I did the hunting and fishing just like most boys do,
Mhm.
growing up down in that area. We just, I didn't get treated any differently. And at the time, sometimes I felt a little like it was a little harsh, maybe for lack of a better word. But what I didn't realize, John, is that it was really preparing me for what I had ahead of me.
Mhm.
Because it really was. And I say that because like you mentioned, a lot of adversity, and I have had a lot of adversity, but who doesn't, right? Everybody on this call has dealt with adversity
Yeah.
in some form or fashion. And so a lot of times what we're dealing with is only preparing us for what's ahead. And that was my case as a young age. And it was hard. It was hard. I mean, as a diabetic, I mean, you don't think about it, but I want to be like all the other kids, right? When we go to birthday parties and as a 8, 9, 10-year old, not able to eat, the cake and the drink the Kool-Aid and everything else, right? I mean, I wasn't able to do those things, but it was always hard for me to try to just be like everybody else. I just want to be like everybody else. And I think
Mhm.
that was part of the challenge growing up.
So you mentioned you had brittle diabetes. Well, what does that mean exactly?
Well, so brittle diabetes is just type 1 is a insulin dependent
Mhm.
diabetes. So, I mean, and that means every time, you're basically your pancreas is not producing insulin, so that you have to take shots to be able to, to break down food. So when you eat or drink something, you take a shot. So that's type 1 diabetes. But with brittle diabetes, it's really a very sensitive type 1 diabetes, right? So, being that I always joked. I can look at a cake and my blood sugar goes up. It's just that very, very sensitive. So, I would bounce. I would go from extremely high blood sugars to low blood sugar. So you're always battling this battle, and that was early on was considered a brittle diabetes. And that's
Mhm.
definitely what I had.
Okay. So take us through growing up with this. I know that you faced some transplants along the way. At what point in your life did you face your first transplant?
Well, as a transplant, that was later, a little bit later, but at the age of 10, so right after I got diabetes, battling that brittle diabetes, my parents brought me over to Houston to the Texas Children's Hospital there in Houston, and at the time in the 70s, they were working on a chemotherapy machine that they would put insulin in, and it would slowly give me insulin in versus taking shots. It would give me insulin throughout the day, and so early on, I was part of the newer technology in insulin pumps. Now, when I say newer technology back then, that meant this thing was a pound 9 ounces. It was huge. It was a massive, big pump. So I was early stages of that with the insulin pumps and the development of that. And so I went through all these different pumps over the years, right? New technology came out. And as you know, as as the years went on, technology got better and better and better as it always and it still is today. But at the time, I would kind of ride through the different insulin pumps. And I was testing a lot of those back in the day, right? And so at the age of 30, I went through high school days and I wanted to be, again, just wanted to be that normal kid,
Mhm.
played sports. I was a baseball guy. I loved baseball. I played baseball through high school and on. And I just kept wanting to be like everybody else. And so at the age of 30, and I fast forward up to that, um, living in the Austin, Texas area at the time, and I was working and I just felt really bad. And so I went into the doctor and the doctor checked me out and he said, Ty, he said, I hate to tell you this. He said, but your kidneys are failing.
Hmm.
I said, well, okay, what is that? And he says, well, here's the challenge. And he told me that, you need a transplant and all that. And he said, but here's the challenge. He says that brittle diabetes is if we just did a transplant with a kidney, I'm afraid you would go through multiple kidneys. And so I said, okay, so what? He said, but here's the thing. There's a doctor out in Baltimore, Maryland, that at the University of Maryland that is doing some studies on a dual transplant where they do the kidney and the pancreas at the same time. And he said, you may be a candidate, you may not. So anyway, we flew out, and sure enough, I was a candidate. We did a lot of tests, a lot of tests. I mean, it was several weeks of testing and blood sugars and all these different, I mean, blood tests and all these labs and just checking out everything. So we went through it. I was a candidate. So, John, as we know, as a kidney, I can have a living donor. And my mother, who was 60 at the time, said, Ty, if I can donate my kidney, I want to give you my kidney. You know, I'm a faith-based guy. My mom said, hey, God gave us 2 kidneys. And one of them's for you. So I was very thankful of that. But now, as the pancreas, we have to wait on a organ donor to receive that, right? So I'm now put on a list waiting for, as I always struggle here, because it had to have a tragic, situation for me to receive this.
Mhm.
So I'm always very thankful of, I never have met the family of the person who donated their pancreas, but I'm so thankful because it has changed my life uh, uh, in many, many ways, and probably so many others too, just from that. So, but it's always unfortunate because obviously, as you know, there was a loss there, and
Yeah.
it's always hard. But again, very, very, very thankful that they had that um, organ donor mindset to really help me in that way. So we get on the list. What happens though is I continue to work, and I didn't want to get on dialysis because my doctor said, Ty, if you don't go on dialysis, you have a much better chance of not dealing with rejections and some of that. So, man, I was determined, John. I was like, I am going to push through this, and so I
What
kept
kind of what kind of like symptoms were you dealing with at that point in time?
It's really just pure exhaustion is really
Yeah.
what it is. Trying to stay awake because you're tired. You can't, it literally, John, it was just, I could sit here and just fall asleep. It's just so tired. Um, and just kind of feel that. It wasn't like pain or anything. It was just pure exhaustion.
Hmm.
So I'd go to work and I kept working through this. I'd go to work and I'd come home about 6 and go to bed, right? Basically just try to make it through the next day and taking naps at lunch kind of thing, just to kind of get through the day. So anyway, I finally went to the doctor. I said, I can't really go any further. I said, this is hard. I said, yeah, I think we're going to have to talk about dialysis. So he said, let's go ahead and put a stent in and get ready for dialysis. And so I went in on Thursday and they put the stent in. So that following Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, I'm at home. I stayed up a little bit later that night to watch the game and all that. And then so I go to bed and midnight the phone rings, and it's that 410 number, and I remember that being the Baltimore number, right? So
Mhm.
I answered the phone and she said, Ty, hey, we possibly got a match for you here. They're working on the organ right now to make sure that it's in good shape and that it matches perfectly. But it looks like this is the one. So I want to get you mobilized and start getting this way. I'm in Texas, right? And
Yeah.
and the transplant's going to be in Baltimore. So I get a hold of my mother and we mobilize, and it's like the movies, right? You get there and you hurry to get there and you panic, but then you wait because you got all the testings, signing papers and all that good stuff. So anyway, so we get in. If you can envision, I'm in the middle surgical room. Over here is the organ the team's working on. There's a team prepping me, and then there's another team over here prepping my mom. And so it was a 16-hour surgery. And let me tell you, John, when I woke up, my mother was sitting in a wheelchair beside me. Um, and it was amazing. I I felt better, but my body was just almost numb. Obviously, I was on a lot of medication and things, but you got to think your body has now gotten 2 organs and it's naturally trying to fight. But then I'm taking 65 pills a day
Hmm.
to try to, from anti-rejection meds to trying to really cope with the side effects from the anti-rejection, all these pills, 65. So your body's really fighting it, right? So that is, went through that. The first year, hardest year I've ever been alive, really, was that after the transplant, because they're trying to regulate your meds and your insulin, your meds, and just trying to get it dialed in. But anyway, after the first year, man, it's like the light just turned on, and I felt amazing. And this is where I try to and I apologize, the story's kind of long, but I want to say right here that, this is where I always say on the other side of adversity of whatever we're dealing with, whatever our audience is dealing with, there is a light because I'm telling y'all, some of these walls that we're facing feel like, they look too high. We can't climb them. The mountain's too tall. Whatever it is, I can tell you it's worth the fight. Because on the other side, after I had that transplant, I was able to get married.
Hmm.
I was able to adopt my second daughter. And what I didn't mention was when I left that night on that call, and this was the big challenge for me because this is where a lot of the no options came in, is when I had to choose to whether I take that surgery or do I not, because if I didn't, I had a 6-year-old daughter at home.
Okay.
And I didn't know I couldn't be there for her being on a dialysis. I didn't want to live that lifestyle. So I took the shot. But this is what I didn't mention either, is there had been 4 of those surgeries and 2 of them had been successful. So there was a risk, right? A risk that I didn't know what I was going to come back to. I didn't know in some cases if I'd come back.
So
But I always
you were taking what, the 33% odds essentially, right, that it was going to be successful.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And so I was really, you know, I really had to get myself in a mindset, right? Just go, I think this is going to be fine. I'm going to be there for my daughter, and it's going to be amazing when I come through, right? I did not even try to think about the other side of it. But as you know, you can't always just block that completely out. But and I tell that story because when I got through it, on the other side of that was, well, like I said, I got married. I got to adopt my second daughter. We opened up a business. This is when I got to really dial in to open up my business, right? And so, and all that was beautiful, man. And I encourage people, whatever you're going through, there's some beautiful things on the other side. Um, but unfortunately, organs don't last forever, right? So my pancreas lasted for 12 years. And the reason I got the pancreas, just so everybody, it produced insulin for me. And so for 12 years, I didn't have diabetes.
Oh, wow.
So that's why, and so the brittle diabetes was gone, right? So it really helped the organs because diabetes is so hard on all your organs when it's out of control. But that really helped my organs, my new kidney not be damaged, right? So
Mhm.
that was a beautiful thing. But the pancreas only lasted for 12 years. But then my mother's kidney lasted for 20 years. And so count 20 years now. Now we're 2019, right? I've opened my business, and it was an awesome opportunity. You mentioned earlier about me being at Disney, and I was able to take those skills and I opened a company that I never thought I would able. I took a marketing and graphics, and then I brought sports together to open up a company called Waterboy Graphics. And what we do is we brand athletic stadiums around the country.
Hmm.
So we go in and you see them in locker rooms and high schools, and that was and so it was really neat. But when we opened it, it just exploded. It started growing and growing and growing, and it was amazing. But at this time, when my kidneys failed in 2019, I had 45 employees. The business is growing like in leaps and bounds, and I again just got told my kidneys are failing. So now they immediately put me on dialysis, which I did not want, but I mean, I didn't have a choice at that point.
Just to pause there for a minute and dig a little
Yes.
deeper. In that moment, I mean, just to kind of so backtrack to you having that major surgery, unsure if it's gonna turn out well or not. It does. You end up building this massive business, and now your kidney's failing. What I mean, in that moment, what were you feeling?
Well, it was hard, I mean, but again, this is where I had to really dial into me, right? And go, it's up to me. I got through that. I can get through this, right? Um, but I still had that mindset from my dad who said, "Hey, Nobody wants to hear your problems.
Mhm.
Dust off and keep going. And that was really my mindset is just do it. You can do this. You can do this. And that's where I developed the no options mindset. And there's a 3-step process that I have developed that through that has helped me in multiple ways. But it wasn't easy, but I mean, I truly believe, and John, I talk about this a lot, is that's when I realized our mind is way powerful than we give it credit for, right? I mean, everybody on this call has exactly what we need to get through adversity, and that's our mind. But sometimes we've got to look ourselves in the mirror and tell ourselves that we are going to do it, right? And I've really felt that's kind of where I got to, where I had to go. I mean, you don't have an option but to push through. You got a business. Now I've got 2 daughters that, and a beautiful wife, and everything's great. This is not the time for me to get sidelined, right? I mean, I'm not
Mhm.
going to let it do that. And, and so moving forward just a bit, I'm lined up now. I'm doing the dialysis, but I would go to this dialysis 3 days a week from 4:30 in the morning to 9. And then I would go to the office and I would act like nothing. I had to go in there. I had to kind of, again, dust off, right? And go in there and go act like there was nothing wrong because a lot of people didn't know about what I was going through because, again, I didn't share that with them.
Mhm.
Um, Now my wife and so a couple of people knew, but they were just kind of my right hand people that would kind of help me through some stuff. Um, but I had to go in there and put this face on because I was kind of the face of the company and helping just the morale and keep people going. And so, in the same time, I was the one that was really in a bad shape, but I had to put that face on and keep going. But through that, one weekend we was down with my wife, had an extended family reunion, and she said, "Ty, do you mind telling a story?" She said, "I know you don't talk about it. I know your dad always, but a lot of these people in my extended family never heard the story and they'd love to hear it." So I told them. And then on the way home that night really is what changed because on the way home that night, I got several texts from people that said, "Hey, Ty, thanks for sharing. We're going to sign up to be organ donors."
Wow.
And one of them said, "Hey, thanks for sharing it. What you're going through is helping me going what I'm going through." And I thought, well, how selfish am I
Hmm.
if I can help others by telling my story? And that was when it really changed for me to really start sharing the story. And then now, John, real quick to get to the end of the story, so that I can kind of get to some other points. But my sister was lined up to be my donor, right? She was a match, and so we're excited. We're going through it all, trying to get through it because dialysis was hard. And I always tell people, if you know somebody going through dialysis, it's pray for them because it is a hard place. And I that's a tough place. It's a hopeless place, right? Because people are sitting in there waiting, just hopefully somebody finds a match for them, right? And so I always encourage people, if they don't know about dialysis centers, take a peek in one of those.
Hmm.
It will definitely put your life in perspective sometime. Um, but um, but going through that, my wife, and then right at the end, my sister finds out that her kidneys aren't going to be a match.
Hmm.
And my wife, who's been my right hand, my rock, she said, "Ty, I can't watch you go through this dialysis like that. I'm going to go donate my kidney because I'm a different blood type," she said. "I'm going to go donate my kidney. So in return, somebody can donate their kidney
Wow.
and I can get moved up on the list." And I thought, wow, that's amazing. That would be awesome. So anyway, she goes in to do her testing and she calls me and she's crying. And I'm like, "What happened?" And she says, "You're not going to believe this." She said, "Todd, but I'm a perfect match for you."
Hmm.
And I said, "Wow." So all that, John, to say 6 weeks after that, I received my wife's kidney. Uh,
Hmm.
and I cannot tell you, I feel better today than I have in years. So, um, and the 3-step process, that's what I want to dive into real quick because I hope people can take this. If you're going to write anything down, this is what I write down. Anybody that's going through adversity. These are the 3 steps when I really dove into what helped me through this. Is number one, I ask myself, because when people say, "Hey, just be a positive thinker," that's such a blanket statement. I mean, I'm like,
Mhm.
when you're in the ditches or you're looking at a wall, that means nothing, right?
Yeah, there's no framework, there's no process there. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just like, what does that mean? So what I did is, and I needed this too. I needed smaller bites, right? I need to take smaller bites to
Mhm.
try to achieve that. So number one, when I look at adversity every day, and I've got notes like this on my mirror, I've got it in my truck. I write number one. I ask myself, am I going to grow or die? And when I say die, I'm not talking about pure death always. I'm
Mhm.
talking about the death of your dreams, your purpose, your goals, your relationships. Are you going to let that go? And that means that's what we do. Grow or die is what we do. Number two is hope or despair. And that's how we think. Are we going to be, are we going to think positive in these ways of that little things? Or are we going to be that victim thing where, why did I get diabetes? Why did I have to have 3 transplants? Why? Right. And you don't want to go there. That's how we think. Hope or despair is how we think. And then number 3 is humor or drama. And that's how we talk. And when I talk about humor or drama, and when I say talk, I'm not talking about so much just verbal, which it is that, but almost how we talk to ourselves. We're
Mhm.
talking to ourselves all the time. We can get through this. Just as we mentioned a while ago, John, how did I get through it? I had to really convince myself I could do this. And I'm talking to myself a lot about how can we get through this? And you're talking, and sometimes we just have to laugh with the situation. Sometimes, I mean, it wasn't never a funny situation, but you know what? Sometimes I had to find humor while I'm down, and that sometimes is what helped me through that. So, and when what we grow or die is what we do, hope or despair is how we think, humor or drama is how we talk. And when we do those 3 small steps, it will help align our mind into a positive thinking mindset, which is what I call the no options mindset.
Yeah, that is so interesting. All of it is, but that last one, humor or drama, because that makes me think of, when you have a loved one who's in the hospital or in a nursing home or, in that type of situation. And I've experienced this myself where you can bring so much more energy in if you're going in there with humor, with helping people to laugh, helping people to enjoy the day. Find some humor in life situations rather than just going in with seriousness and your head down, and then you're bringing down the people that you're visiting that you're supposed to be trying to lift up. So I think that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And it really, and it goes back to kind of that 1% growth thing, John. We've all heard
Mhm.
that analogies of if we grow 1% every day, think of where we'll be in a week, in a month, and a year. It's that same concept, right? Take smaller bites to achieve that positive mindset.
Yeah. So tell me about your podcast, No Options. I know before the show we were talking about podcasting and how you've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people. So what's your mission or your goals and objectives with that show?
Well, when I started out, obviously, we spoke about I do public speaking on
Mhm.
my story and obviously adversity and trying to help people overcome, right? And then as I was doing that, the group that helps me said, "Ty, you ought to get into this podcast." And it was always not really. I thought, no, I don't know that that's me. And I'm so thankful that they did, because what it does is that we came up. I wanted to meet other people and hear stories about adversity, right? Because I believe the more stories that are out there against my the way my dad raised me was nobody wants to hear my problems is an absolute a different way I'm approaching this, because I believe and I see personally when we share our stories how we're helping other people.
Mhm.
And I wanted to go out there and talk to people that have overcome adversity or dealing with adversity, and let our audience hear that everyone's dealing with something. And also then obviously have some different ways of coping or overcoming methods that they've come up with to maybe that could connect with somebody and help them through whatever they're going through.
Yeah. So, I mean, so stories are powerful, and when you can see what someone else has gone through, and obviously, like we were talking pre-show, how I started my podcast with focused on the criminal justice system and people going through obstacles there. I think that in going back to your three-step process for no options with the grow or die action, hope or despair, helping the way that you process for thinking, humor or drama, the process for how we talk to others and talk to ourselves. Um, that like aligns so well with kind of how I've pivoted in my own life and kind of how I look at things. I used to look at things more from a political standpoint, like let's influence our politicians to make our lives better. And I think that's not really, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but there's so much more of an impact we can make in our own lives and the lives of others, based on how we act, how we think, the actions that we take, how we help others. And when it comes down to this show, finding freedom, we can find freedom in our own lives, I think, a lot more by taking those actions in our lives rather than trying to go to a third party, the government, to try to enact things across the board.
Well, that's so true in a lot of ways, because of, habits are what we get, we create these habits. And it's the same way with our thinking. So many people, as I've really studied this and gotten into this about the way we think, it's amazing to me. Our brain is like a muscle, and
Mhm.
we worked it out and you see results, but you're not going to work out one time and just see this great results, right? But the more you try these small steps, you start to see over time, just like working out, going to the gym. You keep going and you start to see results. You keep thinking positive and you keep forcing yourself to be a positive thinker. It's amazing what starts to happen. And I'll tell you, you're right, it's contagious around others, but it's been such therapy for me to help me, you know, think through things. So
Mhm.
it's been really good.
But let me ask you this, it may be something we've already talked about, or maybe it's something new, but as a final takeaway for the Lions of Liberty Finding Freedom audience here,
Mhm.
what would you encourage people to take away from your story? Something that you've learned that you think is such an important thing to kind of leave things on.
Well, and I'm going to give you two because one of them is sometimes we just got to lock arms, right? You mentioned, I mean, the world we live in is a crazy world. It's tough, and sometimes I always say we've got to be able to lock arms with each other and drop this hate
Yeah.
and really believe in each other, right? And then the second thing is tell your stories. I would encourage, you never know the man next to you or the woman next to you that needs to hear your story and
Yeah.
how it can help others. And maybe they hear it and then they tell others. It's like dominoes, right? So I encourage you, even though you may not think you have a story, please share, because I think the more and more we share um, and encourage others through our stories, it's going to help. Like you said, sometimes we got to get to it's kind of a grassroots effort to continue just to help one person at a time. And it's amazing when that just starts to domino.
Absolutely. Well, Ty, thank you for coming on here and sharing your story. And I know my audience probably wasn't familiar with you, that they are now. So I want to encourage everyone watching this to go check out your work. And where can they find more about you? Where can they find your podcast? Where can they find all that stuff?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking. TyGipson.com, and that's TYGIPSON. .com has a lot of more information on there, but also no options with Ty Gipson on Spotify and all the normal channels
Mhm.
out there. And then LinkedIn. Facebook, all that stuff. Please go out and follow me. I'd love to communicate. But I will tell you this too, John. On my website has a number, um, that number is my cell phone. And I tell people all the time, if I can help anybody, if it's just a phone call just to visit with them, that maybe is going through something or whatever it can be. If I don't answer, I will call you back. But I promise you, that's that number. I would love to communicate with somebody that needs any help I can help with.
How often do people take advantage of that? Calling your
You
cell
know,
phone?
it's pretty interesting because just the other
Mm.
night I was on a call from. I got a call. He texted, but we got on a call late, and where was it? Great Britain. I
Wow.
had a gentleman that wanted to visit, and so you'd be surprised. I mean, I've been shocked of how many people that just need to, sometimes they just need to talk,
Yeah,
and but so they do, and I'm very thankful that they do. That's why I put it out there, and that's why I talk about it.
that's awesome, Ty. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great getting to chat with you, and yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, John.
All right, guys, that is a wrap for today's show with Ty Gipson. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. I will make sure to link to all of Ty's social links, his podcast, all that stuff on our show notes page. And if you like this show, if you like everything we're doing here at Lions of Liberty, please do check us out on Patreon and Locals to get bonus content, merchandise, and some other perks from us by joining, becoming a Lions of Liberty patron. So go ahead and check that out. We appreciate you. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you subscribing. And we'll see you again next week with another awesome show. In the meantime, keep moving.